Durango, Colorado, the 18th of November, 2012. A 13-year-old boy named Dylan Redwine gets off a small plane on the tarmac in Durango, on his way to spend a court-ordered weekend with his father. He takes a photo just the wing of the plane, the pavement below it, and sends it to a friend back home, Joseph Ceballos, with 2 words, "What now?" Ceballos would later testify that it didn't read as a joke. He said Dylan had seemed physically afraid the night before, at a sleepover, like something about this visit was already sitting wrong with him. It's a small detail, a kid taking a photo out a window, but it's the last ordinary thing we know Dylan Redwine did before he disappeared. I want to go back 7 years before that flight though, because that's where this story actually starts. In 2005, Dylan's mother, Elaine, then still married to Mark Redwine, filed for a temporary restraining order against her husband. In the filing, she called him a credible threat to the safety of their family. We don't know the specific details behind that filing. The court record on that point isn't public in what's been reported, but the language is on the record from a judge, 7 years before her son was murdered. So the question worth sitting with here isn't what happened in November of 2012. It's why a mother felt the need to put that warning in writing back in 2005, long before anyone had a reason to. By 2011, the marriage was over, and custody had become the battlefield. That year, during a family road trip, Dylan and his older brother Corey found a hidden folder on their father's laptop, photos of Mark in women's lingerie and a wig, wearing a diaper, appearing to eat its contents. They were kids, they found it by accident, and for a while, that's all it was, something disturbing they'd stumbled onto, and presumably tried to forget, except it didn't stay buried. In August of 2012, 3 months before Dylan disappeared, Corey actually texted those photos back to his father, along with the line, "You are what you eat." Other messages that came out at trial called Mark a sperm donor and told him, in Corey's words, to lick something off his shoe. This is the detail most true crime retellings skip entirely, and I think it matters this wasn't old, buried resentment. This was active, ongoing hostility, weeks before the visit that ended Dylan's life. And then, in September 2012, at a custody hearing, Dylan told a judge directly that he wanted to live with his mother. He'd already told her divorce attorney he was, in his words, creeped out by what he'd seen and didn't want to keep visiting his father. A 13-year-old on the record trying to get out of these visits 2 months before the one he couldn't get out of. So that's where things stood on the 18th of November 2012, when Dylan landed in Durango anyway, because a custody order doesn't care how a kid feels about it. What's reported from the case files is that Dylan had made a plan with a friend in Bayfield, Ryan Nava. He was going to walk to Nava's grandmother's house and knock on the sliding glass door at 6:30 the next morning, the 19th. Nava reportedly set an alarm and waited by that door. Dylan never showed. Texts sent to him that morning were never delivered, never opened. Sometime between the night of the 18th and the morning of the 19th, at his father's home, Dylan Redwine died. His remains wouldn't be found for another 7 months. When investigators finally got into that house, the picture that emerged wasn't clean. Testing found blood in multiple spots through the living room, the couch, the floor, a coffee table corner, a love seat, and DNA on at least the love seat came back as Dylan's. A cadaver dog named Molly, handled by Karen Gumman, alerted to the scent of decomposition in the living room, in the bed of Mark's truck, and on clothing. The defense's answer to all of this was that a wild animal, a mountain lion, a bear, something had gotten to Dylan's remains after the fact, and they brought in a forensic anthropologist to point at what might have been a tooth mark on a cheekbone. The prosecution's response was practical, almost geographic. A wildlife officer testified about how unlikely it was that any animal could have carried a body 8 miles up a mountain road, and then a skull, another 1.5 miles beyond that, on its own. Other experts testified about the difference between what an animal's teeth leave behind and what a tool does. The jury heard both sides. Here's the detail I keep coming back to though, because it didn't happen before Dylan died, it happened after. In June of 2013, right after Dylan's remains were finally located, a woman named Kathy Berry, a searcher who'd joined the case through Facebook, Knott family drove out to Mark's home with a friend of Elaine's named Denise Hess to confront him. Mark had apparently texted Elaine that he hoped Hess, who had colon cancer, would die of it. Berry testified that Mark picked up a log from near a stove, let out a sound she described as "ag," and came toward her car with his eyes bulging, though by her own account, and the defense's, he never actually touched her, the car, or Hess. He stopped short, no contact. But think about the timing. His son's body had just been found, and this is who he still was. Mark Redwine was convicted on both counts, second-degree murder and child abuse, resulting in death after a 5-week trial. On the 8th of October 2021, Judge Jeffrey Wilson sentenced him to the statutory maximum, 48 years. He's appealed, and as of now, He remains in Colorado's custody. Elaine Redwine spent 9 years being told her son had probably just run off, that there was no proof, that a restraining order from 2005 didn't mean anything about what might happen later. She was right in 2005, it just took everyone else 16 years to catch up to her.